Hello and welcome to another episode of Furry Found Footage. I'm your host, the Dark Sorceress Orlina. Today I'm going to take a deep dive into Bravestarr, a property with a complicated history. Maybe you've never heard of it, maybe you have. Maybe you're like me, who was raised on a scant few episodes taped off TV, and whose older brother will, to this day, mention the show unprompted. It was the swan song of Filmation, but it could have been much bigger. I used to watch this show on VHS when I was about 4 years old, so this has been a really interesting process for me to go into it, break it down, and find everything there is to know about it. The show follows Marshal Bravestarr, a marshal assigned to New Texas, originally pitched as New Cheyenne, to protect a small community of miners and townsfolk during a rush for a rare mineral called carium. If you're wondering why his skin has some melanin in the 1980s, well, it's not a beach spray tan. He's TV's first Indigenous American superhero leading man. Debuting in 1987, Bravestarr was first released as a toy line. According to legendary Filmation producer Lou Scheimer, Mattel needed a hit, so they pushed the toys out before the show or movie, meaning kids had no idea what relationships the figures had with each other. The series arrived afterward, followed in the end by the movie, which was supposed to be released in theaters prior as a way to introduce the characters. Due at least in part to these missteps and blunders, each outside of Filmation's control, all three endeavors were a flop, but only insofar as a few 80s executives didn't get those big bonus payouts. Lucky us, the children of the future, who can now enjoy the entire series on DVD. Today, I'm going to discuss some of the characters, the series, and the movie, which just may have been the last animated feature film produced entirely in the United States of America. Alright, partners, why don't we saddle up and crack the whip on this here episode? Sit back and grab a sweet water while I discuss the characters. Sadly, as far as I'm aware, there were no American Indians on staff or in advising roles for this project. This was 1987, a time when producers employed educational consultants to help shows focus on values. By the way, Bravestarr's consultant was Dr. Gordon L. Berry, the same guy who consulted on Rainbow Bright, which I covered in another episode. Despite this, the world hadn't yet caught up with the need for representation and tended to be fairly blind toward it, or at least myopic. Although Bravestarr is a show replete with positive values, there's still a lot of stereotyping at work. Bravestarr's powers,
with powers of hawk, wolf, puma, and bear,
and origins haphazardly capitalize on American Indian motifs without referencing any particular tribal origin. According to producer Lou Scheimer, the team figured cultural designations wouldn't be as important in the future, and so Bravestarr never explicitly states his identity, even if it's made completely obvious. Prior to this show, even the trappings of tribal cultures were often depicted as negative. Just look at Peter Pan. Unless these trappings are being used by white people. In Bravestarr, American Indian aesthetics, while clumsily applied in stereotypical fashion, are combined with sci-fi and spacefaring and are presented as positive all over. For more on this dynamic, check out Logan Boese's Bravestarr retrospective article over on A Tribe Called Geek, linked below. As for Bravestarr himself, he's impossible not to love. He's the opposite of the typical hypermasculine macho hero of the 80s. The studio wanted a gentle hero, and as voice actor Pat Fraley describes, he's, quote, a hero who eats quiche.
And I remember that Lou told me, look, we don't want any big butch guy here. We want to have a kind of a gentle hero. So I thought, well, I'll try to do him like he's a hero, but he eats quiche.
He's got a great gold uniform, a nice ass, and he's a bit of a soft touch. But again, these aspects, his sense of humor, his humanity, his willingness to play and learn, are never presented as weak, undesirable, or detrimental to him doing his job. In other words, he's an incredible male role model. Shaman was sort of an accumulation of the tropes present in popular media up to that point. Despite the many flaws in his depiction, it's nice to see Indigenous American motifs represented in the sci-fi genre, especially as early as 1987. He serves as Bravestarr's foster father, and in the series we are treated to frequent flashbacks whenever Bravestarr needs to remember a lesson Shaman taught him. Shaman's role as elder is as important as his role as a mystic mentor. Bravestarr often consults him before making big decisions, reflecting the importance of elders. He's written as a very compassionate person, unflappable, and widely respected. I just wish he had an actual name. Judge J.B. McBride is sort of a Beverly Crusher type, only without the tap dancing. She's got a lasso gavel and a father who works for the newspaper. Despite being a judge, she gets her hands dirty pretty often, which I'm not sure is entirely legal. Her voice actor Susan Blue is openly lesbian and has gone on to direct. By the way, Erica Scheimer, the producer's daughter, the recording director, and the only other female voice actor on the series, you bet your buns she's also a lesbian. According to Erica, Filmation was, quote, the gayest place in town. Early in the series, JB's dad gets married to this Space Marine Commander Kane, who becomes her gun-toting stepmom. Since there are so few women in this series, I want to mention Vipra, who is absolutely baby. She's another Susan Blue voice, and in one episode she gets hold of a magical book that allows her to perform dark magic, including giving Bravestarr amnesia. Naturally, her first inclination is to take over the villain's gang. Deputy Fuzz is one of the prairie people, which are basically prairie dog guys in fur coats. They're the indigenous people on New Texas, which actually comes up as an issue more frequently than you'd think. More on that later.
Oh, I hope you're there to remember me.
I really wish I could understand what the hell he was saying. By the way, Bravestarr calls him Little Pard, and he's got this lasso hidden up his sleeve that he uses to great effect sometimes. 30-30.
Without question, my favorite character in Bravestarr would have to be 30-30.
The only surviving equestroid from a colony on New Texas. He's been in this very evocative temple thing for goodness knows how long, and he's got a rich cornpone accent as thick as grits.
Another sweet water, please, handlebar.
His greatest love is his gun, Sarah Jane, a blunderbuss that shoots concussive blasts. He's ornery, always rearing for a fight, and loves chili.
Quit hogging the chili, big partner.
Bravestarr often calls him Big Partner, or more frequently, Big Pard. I'm not gonna beat around the bush, he is insanely hot. I've had a crush on him since I was like 4 years old. Apparently his design may have been inspired by Van Halen frontman David Lee Roth, which, yeah, I could see it. Not a lot of cool macho dudes in cartoons wear tiaras, except those secure enough in their masculinity to do so. Actually, 30-30's subversion of masculinity is another reason why I like him. Despite being big, buff, and macho, he isn't afraid to take care of his fabulous hair or have male friends call him pretty.
You mean a flower's as important as I am?
Yep, but not half as pretty.
I agree.
And that's valid. If men could freely compliment other men's hair, we might not have war anymore.
This is a delicate mission.
You saying I ain't delicate?
30-30's voice actor Ed Gilbert, seen here as the Hardy Boys' cool lawyer dad, is also famous for voicing Baloo in Tailspin. Under his birth name, Edmund Francis Giesbert, Ed was an accomplished coleopterologist and described quite a few Central and South American beetle species and genera, particularly in the family Cerambycidae, meaning, appropriately, longhorn. Check out this little beauty, Parastrongylaspis lindsayii, which he described the same year Bravestarr came on air. Pretty incredible. And just because I'm so obsessed, here are some of my favorite 30-30 clips in no particular order.
Oh, you work all day for some sugar and some hay, putting the bad guys away.
You can do it, 30-30!
I can't hold it. Dang, nabbit. He's okay in my book.
30-30's character designer Chris Peterson is also an accomplished sculptor, working on tons of different sculpts for Disney, among others, maquettes for Fern Gully, and, get this, a few Big Dog shirts. Hell yes. It's kind of amazing how much talent Filmation managed to cram into one building. Handlebar. I love this guy. I don't have much to say other than that he used to be a space pirate and now he slings sweet water with the best of them. He's a Rigelian and he's super strong, like a lot of people in this show, The best episode with him involves this bull called Rampage. Wow, I can't believe this extremely toyetic bull was just hanging out down there. They're stuck together, scared, fighting each other, but Handlebar saves the bull's life and they become fast friends.
You know, guess I made a new friend.
Isn't Rampage the cutest thing? Tex Hex. He's perfect in every way, and in fact, he's the best version of what he is. A masterful combination of cowboy, zombie, wizard. They made him for Ghostbusters, but they loved him so much that they made him the main villain of Bravestarr, and I really think that's saying something. He was originally a miner looking to score big on New Texas, but ran afoul of Stampede and became a lich under his thrall. He's the ringleader of a gang of similar servants called the Carrion Bunch. Carrion Crew maybe would have been cooler. And one of his best episodes is a Christmas Carol-esque journey into his past, where we see him and his girlfriend having a picnic.
Do you really have to go all the way to this faraway planet? What's it called? New Texas.
Awesome. Look, Mom, character depth. Stampede is Tex Hex's boss. He's a bronchosaur, which was a sort of cow dinosaur once prevalent on New Texas. His whole motivation is that he wants to get his planet back from the miners and settlers, which, actually, that's a pretty compelling reason. He's voiced by Alan Oppenheimer, aka Skeletor.
I order you to get those miners and merchants off my planet.
And whenever he's around, you know things are about to get serious.
And he's right here where Thunderstick said he'd be.
These are the Dingoes, an adorable bunch of naughty little cowboy furries getting into trouble at all times. In some episodes, they hold normal jobs, but they always seem to be back to wrestling Sola cows a few episodes later. There are a lot more characters, too many to name, and I'll show you a few more of them later, but for now, I think I'd like to talk about the film. Bravestarr, the Legend. Now, I'm a total fangirl, so my opinion may be bursting with bias, but the Bravestarr movie rules. Fun fact, that's one of the writers of Bravestarr, Bob Forward, posing there in the movie poster, in costume. Pretty cool. Bob Forward was also head writer on the Legend of Zelda series in 1989, and Biker Mice from Mars in 1993. Furthermore, and maybe this is only of interest to me, but the other writer of the Bravestarr film, Steve Hayes, was also responsible for the story behind the 1971 classic Time After Time. Those are some serious chops. Bravestarr the Legend had a limited release in theaters, but it deserves a modern watch. It's almost hard to believe it was made for kids, as the plot tends toward the serious and adult several times. It has plenty of downright incredible animation, especially in shots like these from Richard Williams' protege Tom Cito, who said on the 2006 DVD release that the 30-30 introduction was the best sequence in the whole film, and I tend to agree. Heavy use of effects is another thing that sets Bravestarr the Legend apart. Look at the layering of effects here. Amazing. And the backgrounds? Absolutely world-class, with really dynamic colors. The soundtrack and scene composition are also full of nods to classic westerns. This film serves as the introduction to the world and characters, and it's easy to see why Filmation wanted to lead with the movie. They really could have had another hit on their hands like He-Man and She-Ra if toy and TV marketing executives outside the company hadn't mishandled it. This is compelling stuff. Take Bravestarr's introduction, asleep on Judge JB's couch as they prepare to dock on New Texas. The first thing he does is ogle her, which maybe gives some of you pause, but after a harrowing airlock adventure, JB is the one ogling him. It's nice, especially considering...
You'll notice we did especially for the women in the studio. It's Bravestarr walking away from camera.
Oh, yeah.
We paid special attention to the walk. That's an actual fact. It wasn't an accident. I did it for the ladies.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
These two have an electrifying dynamic on screen, which is carried on through the show on a more platonic will they or won't they level. There's a quiet scene before the climax of the film, while they're helping Fort Carrion shore itself up before Tex Hex and his minions attack. They share one of the most passionate kisses I've ever seen in an animated movie. Unbelievable. It's so refreshing to see an animated movie where a woman is explicitly shown to have the same appetites as a man, and that wanting to kiss is not a purely male Prince Charming quality. Again, Bravestarr bucks expectations. Take a look at Bravestarr happily carrying JB's luggage and lingerie. He doesn't complain, and he's not emasculated by doing it. In fact, he takes the opportunity to force femme some of the baddies. Let's talk about that 30-30 introduction scene. In addition to all these amazing backgrounds, the tension here is palpable, and there are so many great action shots and moments like 30-30 putting a fist through the wall or Bravestarr wrestling with him. Definitely plenty here for fans of homoerotic and platonic male friendships alike. Another of my favorite moments in the film comes right after the fight. After Bravestarr gets a good hit on 30-30, he carries him out of the crumbling sanctum to safety and offers to call it a draw and to be friends. But 30-30, well, he has his own code of honor.
Nope, not yet. Now we're even.
Basically the bromance of the century. The rest of the plot involves Bravestarr and pals protecting Fort Carrium from an oncoming siege. Love this Undertaker who pops up now and again, excitedly measuring townsfolk. There's this great sequence of everyone pitching in, doing their part by hauling around girders and smashing railroad spikes. 30-30 makes some incredible faces during this scene. Even in the film, Filmation's famous pro-social messaging is at the forefront. Only by overcoming xenophobia to cooperate with the indigenous prairie people can the miners and settlers have any hope of ending Stampede's dark machinations. During the climactic battle, Bravestarr and Shaman team up to destroy Stampede while his necro bronchosaurs march on Fort Carrium. Oh no! Don't worry. Stampede is bested and dies a wonderfully messy death, only to come back immediately after to devour the scenery in the series. Speaking of the series, why don't we jump in and discuss it? I hope this isn't the standard opinion nowadays, but when I was coming up in the mid-2000s internet era, Filmation really had a bad reputation. Flashback to the rise of the YouTube commentator, internet forums, and untrained fan as critic. Yes, we farmed out film criticism to everyone under the sun, and maybe that's not a bad thing, but there tend to be a lot of thought trends with opinions online. One or two videos from a guy who's made it his job to scream awkwardly at every so-called sin of a given piece of media, and that tends to be all she wrote. Further, I think shows from the 80s suffered a lot of bashing between the 1990s and the 2010s, the era of if you show any emotion other than antipathy toward anything, you're gay and that's bad, or as I like to call it, the curse of cool. Take Filmation, accused of recycling animation to stay cheap. Let's break that down. Yes, Filmation did recycle animation, and in fact it was part of their policy using their stock system to reuse animation where they needed to, either dressing it up differently with effects, flopping or reversing it, and so on. Recall that this was before you could watch a GIF of a given animation 50 times whenever you wanted, even before a widespread VHS market. Let me think now. Is there another animation company, one that represents, let's say, the gold standard? I wonder if they recycled any animation too. I thought so. What about anime? Surely anime never recycles animation. It's too amazing, too cool, too Japan, right? Right? Oh yeah, I guess they did reuse that every episode, huh? I ask you, what does it matter if Filmation reuses Bravestarr's power animations or 30-30 whipping out Sarah Jane? Remember, television animation is limited to begin with. When I watched this show on VHS as a child, I was delighted to see familiar bits of animation show up, especially the extra special looking ones. Furthermore, there's a problem with film criticism where budgets are never taken into consideration. The Bravestarr series budget topped out at around $20 million, which is approximately one Beauty and the Beast, which is not only a film but a unit of measurement. According to the American Film Institute's online catalog, the Bravestarr film had a budget of only $4 million. At this point, I'd like to remind you that Filmation produced the film and series entirely within the United States, and they really fought to do so in a time when everyone from Deke to Disney were firing heaps of women in their ink and paint departments and sending those jobs overseas. Filmation was the sole holdout. And I think that's pretty important. Producer Lou Scheimer wrote an article in Daily Variety magazine in 1987 talking about how studios lose control of their messaging, their art, and their property when they farm animation out overseas. He also discussed how hard Filmation fought to keep it all in the country. His hope was that in the future, meaning our present, using computer technology to digitally paint cells would cut costs without sending labor overseas. Sadly, we now know that studios do everything digitally and still farm it all out. Is this really due to rising costs or simply rising greed? Remember, we're living in a time when entire films are made and thrown out for tax write-offs. Looking at you, Zaslav. Films are often judged on their own merits, but I don't think it makes much sense to base judgment of a $4 million film by comparing it to better contemporary films with vast differences in budgets. Before I go on to discussing the series, I want to talk about budgets. You hear a lot of talk about how studios just can't afford to mount traditionally animated productions anymore. Well, sticking with Beauty and the Beast, two-time Oscar winner and enjoyer of a 95% Metacritic rating, it cost about $25 million to make. Adjusted for inflation to the year 2017, that's $45 million. Why that year? Well, the 2017 CGI remake, winner of 0 Oscars and rated at 65% on Metacritic, cost $250 million in 2017 money. Which means that for the price of just one middling CGI cash grab, you could make around 6 hand-animated modern classics of storytelling beloved by all. Pretty sad. Let's switch gears and talk about Filmation's famous pro-social messaging. In the early days, Filmation was actually blackballed by the big TV studios because they didn't want anything to do with pro-social cartoons. As trite as they seem to a modern viewer drip-fed on easy cynicism over the last few decades, I ask you, where are children getting these messages these days? Where are they learning that all life is important?
The smallest creature in the universe is precious.
Where are they learning about kindness? Their parents, who are raising them on tablets with unfiltered internet access? Bravestarr went hard. As a series, it continued to walk in the same path forged by He-Man and She-Ra, but included some surprisingly adult stories coming completely out of the blue here and there. Among other things, episodes of the Bravestarr series cover falling out with friends, drug addiction and overdose death, whether evil people are redeemable, pregnancy and giving birth, reservations, protectorates, and apartheid, keeping wild animals as pets, single parents remarrying, inappropriate touching, your hero becoming a murderer, slavery, ageism, racism, life's innate value, and the list goes on. In addition, something I found important and rare was how Bravestarr showed it was cool and masculine to value life and express your emotions and your love even for another man.
You really love him very much.
I owe him my life. I owe him whatever I am. I owe to Shaman. He's been mother and father to me. Taught me right from wrong. He's the greatest man I've ever known. He's made me laugh and taught me to care. Yes, I love him. Far more than he'll ever know.
These are the kind of masculine values real men are made of. But it's sad because I think a lot of men today are afraid to engage with kindness and emotions for fear of being branded gay. Which, is another reason why all this anti-LGBTQ bullshit is a problem. You're basically robbing even cis people of the ability to express themselves by putting shackles of are they or aren't they gay all over them. When you call a man gay or a sissy for expressing his emotions, being gentle or loving, you've turned your back on all those things, which says a lot more about you than it does him. And coming back to Indigenous American issues, I'd like to let the show speak for itself here.
Galaxy Council has decided that the natives of New Texas, you call them prairie people, I believe, should be confined to a secure area.
What? What do you mean by a secure area?
It's just another way of saying prison.
We read Earth history. Galaxy Council treat prairie people like Indians treated a long time ago. Same thing. Try to put us on reservations.
We will fight to be free, if we have to.
And I'll be right there, fighting alongside them.
Throughout the series, there's also this really interesting phenomenon where the episode will be about something pretty real, like apartheid or pregnancy.
Marsh, she was about to have her baby.
And then at the end, the lesson that Bravestarr gives will be like, don't run away from home, or make sure you don't go joyriding in your parents' car. It's kind of funny. Before I move on to merchandise, because this is Furry Found Footage, I'm going to give you video heads a list of furries in the Bravestarr series. Saddle up and strap in. Krang, the dingoes Goldtooth, Barker, and Howler, Weasel, Craver, Dingo Llama, Dingo Dan, the Fufta, Two-Face and Avianoid, Ape Cats, Hogtie, a Porkinoid, Vipra and Diamondback, Reptilianoids, Solacows, Dealer, that's right, this guy's a drug dealer. Infamously, the episode he appears in involves him giving a kid a drug called Spin, which sends him on a dark path, which ultimately ends with his death. Stampede himself is quite a dish. 3030, of course. This guy, known only as Zookeeper. Okay, let's talk about some merchandise. Let's have a showcase, shall we? First of all, there's the cursed white Bravestarr for the European market. I wonder at what point they switched, or if it was a matter of appealing to a different demographic. I think it was definitely the right call. Naturally, they had all these toys that are now so expensive you can't so much as buy one accessory for less than $40. Look at Fuzz and Scuzz's action figures. Ugh, absolutely terrifying. And while I'm here, speaking of terrifying, if you thought Tex Hex was comic relief in the show, wait until you see his action figure. Ooh, I scared myself. They also made these laser tag pistols called Neutralasers, which sound like they're really good for you and full of vitamins. Check out these costumes from the 1987 Collegeville costume catalog. So kids just walked around with this cool muscle horse on their smock? Different times. In my own tiny collection, I have this little mini book which details Bravestarr and 3030's first meeting, like in the film. It really stood out to me because it's illustrated by Isidro Mones, a Spanish artist who got his start at Warren Publishing in the 1970s, working on properties like Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella. I really love how he draws 3030's big, soft horse lips. There's also a number of little picture books, some of them written by the people who were writing episodes. I've yet to get my hands on them, but I'm eager to check them out. In addition, there was an audio cassette adventure produced, but it appears to be one voice actor doing all the voices, and it's not anyone who worked on the show as far as I can tell. Also, because I'm a weird obsessive nerd, I bought a few cells that I was lucky enough to find. Check out 3030 and Queen Singlish. By the way, Queen Singlish is a single episode villain, and I love saying her name fast. Queen's English. She, like me, is obsessed with horses.
A superior stallion! A great and magnificent horse!
Before I close out my discussion about the merchandise, I want to talk about something mentioned to me by one of my faithful video heads. I'm trying to get that to catch on as a joke, but also for real. Bestogel. In 1989, Don Brayford, a poet, inventor, and electromechanical operations manager for the city of Maple Ridge for over 22 years, built a giant clock called the Beast in the city center.
Now meet the man behind the horse and why he is making them so upset.
Oh, you want to see the secret now? All right, I'll show you the secret.
The clock/mechanical statue is based on none other than Mattel's 1986 3030 action figure, seen here in all his gun-toting glory. You can't make this stuff up. To add to all this, the city of Maple Ridge must have had a Beast chatbot at some point, because you can find a list of answers in first person on the site, including gems like this. The clock and statue are actually still standing to this day. The beast's creator even wrote a poem the year he was built, which serves as his origin story and purpose. It's actually kind of lovely, especially considering it has a strong environmental message as far back as 1989. Also, it reveals the clock runs on the souls of human beings who destroyed by pollution and technology, eternally tortured by nightmares and the beast himself. Hopefully that's actually true. I'll link the full story below. So there you have it, Bravestarr. Another great property completely robbed by executive decisions. Just think, if it had rolled out differently, we might be having a Bravestarr series on Netflix. Honestly, at this point, it's kind of stupid for the rights holders, I think it's Universal, to not do anything with Bravestarr. We're living in a time when we need more Indigenous American representation than ever, and just think how great Bravestarr would be if they brought it back with Native American writers, actors, and consultants. I just hope they don't ruin it like everything else by making everyone say fuck every other word. By the way, while I'm here grinding an axe,
Uh-oh, I feel a lecture coming on.
what is up with the fact that the new He-Man series makes He-Man look even more hypermasculine and macho than he did in the 80s when we were mocking him? It really seems like whoever was making the call here did so out of a kind of fear of men not being ginormous muscle freaks. It's time for this nasty sorceress to go riding off into the sunset. Maybe I'll show up on New Texas and try to steal something, if only to get 3030 to throw me in the hoosegow. I really think I can make him happy. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me, and of course I'd like to thank my Laserdisc Patreon supporters. For any price, you get to see the episodes early and without ads, but for $5, I will say your name here on the air. So thank you for your support, Alex McFall, Joe the English Otter, Silly Scotty Dog, Kooky Trails, Plexel, Manji Butt, Manji, Stubadub, Crown, Norman Whitetail, Goddle Drury, Dillon Opossum, Alex McFall, and Murja.